We're moving on, and my next guest on stage, I hope she's here, is Betelhem Dessie, who's one of our keynotes this afternoon. Welcome up on stage. I'll introduce you further once you're up here. And applaud.
Should I?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. And you get to choose. I don't know. I don't know why, but
Okay.
so welcome, Bethlehem.
Thank you for having me.
You and I have been emailing a lot around this trip and you
Yeah.
coming here. I'm so glad we could
Yeah.
make it. And as I said, you will be one of the keynotes this afternoon on the main stage. But those of you who are here will get a glimpse of who you are and what the amazing things that you do. So I forgot to mention that Linnea is actually probably the youngest CMO in a leading tech company. I chose not to talk about her age, but with you, I just have to talk about your age because you're 20 years old
Yes.
and you've already accomplished so much. And I want to talk about your drive, whatever drives you, because I know just like me and just like Linnea, you at an early age you found an interest in technology. You're a self-taught programmer.
Yes.
So let's start there with you as well. Like, what actually made you, as a 9-year-old girl in Ethiopia, where you are from, discover coding and the love for tech?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's such a pleasure. I mean, I consider Stockholm my second home now because I come very often. So, as she said, my name is Betelhem Dessie. I come from Ethiopia, which is a country in the eastern part of Africa. I started coding at a very early age. I was 9 years old. I started coding because I wanted to make money, basically.
I love
want-
that.
I wanted to make money because I wanted to celebrate my birthday. So my father had a shop which he sold his phone, not his phone, but multiple phones. So people would come and buy those phones. And I would ask him, give me money so that I can celebrate my birthday, to buy cake, new clothes, to invite my friends. But then he was busy, so he ignored me. And then I figured, okay, what can I do? So I was pitching to people who are coming out of the shop so that I could edit some videos for them and put some music on some of the photos they've taken, install some apps on their phones. So I made about $90 that day.
Wow.
And I said, okay, $90 is a lot of money. How can I expand my business? I've never been outside of the city. I don't know what's happening outside, but I had TV, right? So we watched a lot of Power Rangers, Hannah Montana, and then there is an ad. And then on the ad, the toys, they would give you a website. And then, so when I went to the website, because I had access to dial-up internet, they would tell you the price of the toy, what features it had, and I figured, okay, in order to promote my business, I need to build a website. So I started researching, and then also people started coming to our shop to see me and then give me books. So that's how I first started coding. I first started with some Visual Basics and HTML.
Wow.
Yeah.
Super inspiring. And so you're now part of a company organization called ICOG, and you were part of founding the part of ICOG that's called Anyone Can Code.
Yes.
And I read that you started your studies at university, but quit just to be able to sort of push ACC and to encourage other people and young people to code. Why is that important?
Because usually most of the efforts that are happening, especially not only in Ethiopia but on the continent, are a lot. There's a lot of focus on bringing a lot of foreign investment, but there's a lack of focus on actually developing the human capital that's available.
Yeah.
And me having those types of opportunities, I figured I would use the energy I have now to invest in young kids, because teaching is also my passion. So I figured I would invest that now and maybe learn later, but I'm still learning. And ICOG ACC has now grown globally. We just delivered a training here in Sweden, actually, last year for 68 kids, and we're expanding in other countries on the continent. So I want to put the energy that I have right now in full focus and full mode on what I'm doing.
On doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you already mentioned that Stockholm is your second home. But
Yeah.
you're traveling a lot to Amsterdam as well. What's going on there?
So, basically, I run the project, but I'm also kind of a PR, I would say, for our company. So, besides I Code, Anyone Can Code, we try to build a more sustainable ecosystem. So, we teach these kids, right? So, what's next? They have gotten the skills, they've no coding now. Then the next step is entrepreneurship. The next step is either jobs, internship, right? So we provide that with our program called Solve It. So we partner with different countries and we do knowledge transfer. For example, we partner with the JICA, which is the Japan International Corporation, in which they bring in Japanese investors, Japanese knowledge to us. So I'm basically going to the Netherlands so that to see, because there's a lot of knowledge in agriculture, and Ethiopia's economy is mostly based on agriculture.
Yeah.
So I want to see how we can innovate together and see how the knowledge transfer would work.
So tell us a little bit about sort of what's happening on the tech scene in East Africa. I just went there to Nairobi for the
Okay.
first time this in December because I have friends who actually run startups there, and I'm this close to actually leaving this country. Don't tell anyone to move there because
Okay.
it's like so bubbly and things are happening in ways that between the two between us, Sweden and Europe feels a bit tired compared to what's going on there. But what's your sort of image of what's happening? For example, I saw that you're hanging out with Jack Dorsey, for example, the founder of Twitter, who decided to spend half a year in East Africa to do research.
Yeah, I mean, what I see the difference between, I would say, Europe, US, or any other country, especially in tech, and East Africa or Africa as a whole is innovation is driven by necessity, right? It's not really cool. It's actually, you need to do it because people need to have shelter, people need to have water, people need to eat food. So it's driven by necessity. So a lot of people are hungry to do that. And nothing is easy. I mean, you could find venture capital firms, for example, here. You could go to these kinds of events. But for example, when you come to Ethiopia, there's only one venture capital firm. We just started. So it's basically, it's very hard to find these kinds of opportunities. And there's a lot of young people who don't have jobs. So a lot of people are hungry for it, which makes the scene even more vibrant. And governments are a bit of an obstacle, but now they're changing their ways to make sure that it's more comfortable for different players to come in. So I would say those kind of elements make the tech scene very vibrant. And of course, there's a lot of consumer base. When you look at Nigeria, it's 200 million people,
Yeah.
100 million people in Ethiopia. That's a lot of customers, which is about 70% of the people are young. So it's growing very fast, but I think in order to scale, in order to grow, there needs to be a lot of knowledge transfer
Yeah.
of people who've done it before. But the solutions and the problems we have identified, we can build it with the human capital we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I still sort of hear most people talk about sort of how we can use capital from here and knowledge from here and help out sort of in East Africa. And that's, I actually prefer to talk about sort of the perspective of flipping it around, because what I see in the type of startups that are driven by necessity, as you mentioned, you're also doing things like leaping in ways that we haven't done here. So you can start from completely different faces than we did when we started tech companies here. So the West world has so much to learn from what you're doing in East Africa as well. Have you seen examples like that as well? And do you see that people here understand that more?
I don't think there are a lot of success stories that have been showcased. I mean, there's a lot of success stories, but a lot of people don't shine light on it, or people don't care to even look.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So what you said was there are different problems that we see here. For example, if you talk about water, electricity problems, a lot of people might not think the same way as they would in East Africa as they are here.
Yep.
So those kind of problems, identifying the problems and finding the solution should be the job of the people who are actually there. But also what we need to understand is when you grow a startup, you need to evaluate whether you need internal or external knowledge, right?
Yep.
So you need to identify, for example, scaling. Still, the buying capability of the continent is still growing. It needs a bit more time. So if you sell outside of the continent, there will be a lot of money coming into the continent. So, but understanding what kind of markets are outside would need kind of knowledge from outside of the continent too. So identifying where these things fit, I think would be the best way to work together, from both from the continent side, but also from knowledge from the outside. Yeah.
So this is Women in Tech.
Yeah.
And the Women in Tech movement is stronger than ever, I would say, luckily. What is the Women in Tech movement like in East Africa or in Ethiopia, where you're mostly based?
I mean, where to begin, right? Even tech in general, I mean, even starting with that. For example, in Ethiopia, the most successful startup is founded by a female, run by a female. It's like an Uber-like application called Ride. But still, the problem lies within the home, right? Because parents don't think tech is a way forward, so they don't actually encourage their kids, their girls, to go into these types of trainings or pursue these types of skills. So still, there's a big problem in regards to tech, because still, as I said, there's not a lot of like sexist stories, or it's not as sexy as it is in the Western world. So it starts from home. But we're trying hard. We're trying hard to create opportunities for women. We're trying to make sure that we shine a light on these sexist stories, so that as strong it is here, we want to make sure that women are empowered and to get into tech.
So I mentioned that my plans to move to East Africa are pretty advanced, and I'm actually sort of looking at which country I'm moving to. I saw that Rwanda is actually in the top 10 globally when it comes to diversity, and sort of they've managed to build a society that's where women are in majority in many places. What does it look like in the other sort of neighboring countries, and do you have an idea of what they succeeded in doing?
I mean, Rwanda is one of the, I would say, the best examples, especially when you come into government involvement and government, because the government is really willing to put all things aside so that the youth and also tech and also the country grows as a whole. Not a lot of governments, usually when you come to the continent, it's usually the problem with the government because of corruption and such, but Rwanda has actually solved that problem to make sure that people thrive in the ecosystem. I would say Ethiopia is kind of going under the same reforms with the new government. New policies are coming up. I mean, we still have, I was telling people, we still don't have like credit cards or debit cards that we can use for payment because of the different infrastructure rules and regulations that have been happening. Kenya is a very thriving scene. If you've seen investments that are coming to the continent, Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa are among the top ones, especially in tech. So wherever you go in East Africa, Uganda is also one of the most thriving tech scenes. But as you know, I would suggest Ethiopia very much because it's very diverse. It's very, you have a lot of things to look into. It's a lot of problems, a lot of hardships, but I think it would be an interesting journey if you want to move.
Okay, I'll definitely consider it. So we have 2 more minutes, and I was thinking, can you name a couple of sort of favorite startups in your area of the world that you think that the audience should know about and sort of look into, and maybe even invest in if they have capital to do so?
I mean, I always tell this story of this young man who was part of our Solvit training. So it's in a very remote city in Ethiopia. So the problem that he saw was when he went to the city and he would ask for milk, right? And then the cafes would say, oh, we don't have milk. But he knows at home there's a lot of milk at his house, his neighbor's house. And then now that he has identified this problem, he didn't know what to do with it. So just with like 6 weekends of training of design thinking, entrepreneurship, and how to build kind of a simple wireframed app, what he was able to do was he collected the data of how many liters of milk was produced in the household he was around, and then he also calculated the shortest distance to collect this milk. And then next thing you know, after I think a year, we went back and we saw he bought his own like Bajaj, which is a tuk-tuk. He has a MacBook Pro, and now he's selling milk from his village to the city. So these are the kind of startups that are that people don't know about, that are thriving, but they don't have an idea on how to scale. Because as you said, a lot of resources is outside of the continent, and if people come and see, and if people come and learn about these startups, I think there's a way people can help with and also support. So I mean, I'll definitely write about these kind of startups. That's my plan.
What was
for
the
this
name of
year.
that one?
I mean, he doesn't even have
Okay,
a
he
name.
doesn't even have a name. I love it.
We call it Uber for milk for now. For now, but these are the kind of skills that we need to teach them: the marketing and how to sell their products.
Okay.
So yeah.
That's great. Uber for milk. Thank you, Betty, for joining us.
Thank
and
you,
looking
thank you
forward
very
to
much.
seeing you on the main stage.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.